Good evening and welcome to Sun Meadow Temple. We are so happy you've joined us. My name is Alba and I use she, her pronouns. This is our second May observance and I'm so happy you are here. As always, this service will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. Please remember our ongoing wax museum project, pentagram project, and our audiobook project. If you're participating in the Wax Museum project, remember that the deadline for these is coming up in early July, so please get them to me as soon as possible. We'll open today with our opening words, which will hear on the slide behind you. Please listen as I read the words aloud, or read them aloud along with me. We welcome you into the light of the gods and light this flame in celebration. May its brightness symbolize our connection to the gods and the natural world. May you join us in this community of faith, cherishing love and with open hearts. So our theme for this month is Man as Creator, and our readings today are Ovid's Metamorphosis, translated by Henry T. Riley, Meno by Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett, and Pliny's Natural History, translated by John Bostock and Henry T. Riley. So we will begin with Ovid's Metamorphosis. And this is Fable 2, by the way, of Ovid's Metamorphosis. Minos paid, as vow to Jupiter, the bodies of 100 bulls as soon as disembarking from his ships. He reached the land of Curetis, and his palace was decorated with the spoils there hung up. The reproach of his family had now grown, and the shameful adultery of his mother was notorious from the unnatural shape of these two-formed monster. Minos resolves to remove the disgrace from his abode, and to enclose it in a habitation of many divisions, and an abode full of mazes. Daedalus, a man very famed for his skill in architecture, plans the work and confounds the marks of distinction, and leads the eyes into mazy wanderings by the intricacy of its various passages. No otherwise than the limpid meander sports in the Phrygian fields, and flows backwards and forwards with its varying course, and, meeting itself, beholds its waters that are to follow, and fatigues its wandering current, now pointing to its source, and now to the open sea. Just so Daedalus fills innumerable paths with windings, and scarcely can he himself return to the entrance. So great are the intricacies of the place, after he has shut up here the double figure of a bull and of a youth, and the third supply, chosen by lot each 9 years, has subdued the monster twice before, gorged with Athenian blood, and when the difficult entrance, retraced by none of those who have entered it before, has been found by the aid of a maiden, by means of thread gathered up again, immediately the son of Aegeus, carrying away the daughter of Minos, sets sail for Dia, and barbarously deserts his companion on those shores. Her thus deserted and gratefully lamenting, Liber embraces and aids, and, that she may be famed by lasting consolation, he places her in the heavens, and the crown taken from off her head. It flies through the air, yielding air, and as it flies, its jewels are suddenly changed into fires, and they settle in their places, the shape of the crown still remaining, which is the middle between the constellation resting on his knee and that which holds the surface. In the meantime, Daedalus, abhorring Crete and his prolonged exile, and inflamed by the love of his native soil, was enclosed there by sea. Although Minos, said he, may beset the land and the sea, still the skies at least are open. By that way we will go. Let Minos possess everything besides. He does not sway the air. Thus he spoke, and he turned his thoughts to arts unknown till then, and varied the course of nature. For he arranged his feathers in order, beginning from the least, the shorter ones succeeding the longer, so that you might suppose they grew on an incline. Thus does the rustic pipe sometimes rise by degrees with unequal straws. Then he binds those in the middle with thread, and the lowermost ones with wax, and thus ranged with the gentile curvature, he bends them so as to imitate real wings of birds. His son Icarus stands together with him, and ignorant of that he is handling the source of danger to himself, with a smiling countenance he sometimes catches at the feathers which the shifting breeze is ruffling, and at other times he softens the yellow wax with his thumb, and by playfulness he ruins the wondrous work of his father. After finishing hand was put to the work, the workman himself poised his own body upon these two wings, and hung suspended in the beaten air. He provided his son with them as well, and said to him, Icarus, I recommend thee to keep the middle tract, lest if thou shouldest go too low, the water should clog thy wings; if too high, the fire of the sun should scorch them. Fly between both, and I bid thee neither look at boots nor Hellas, nor the drawn sword of Orion. Under my guidance take thy way." At the same time he delivered him the rules for flying, and fitted the untried wings to his shoulders. Amid his work and his admonitions, the cheeks of the old man were wet, and the hands of the father trembled. He gives kisses to his son, never again to be repeated, and raised upon his wings, he flies before and is concerned for his companion, just as the bird which has let forth her tender young from the lofty nest into the air, and encourages him to follow, and instructs him in the fatal art, and moves his own wings himself, and looks back on those of his son. A person, while he is angling for fish with his quivering rod, or the shepherd leaning on his crook, or the ploughman on the plough tail, when he beholds them is astonished, and believes them to be divinities who thus can cleave the air. And now Samos, sacred to Juno, and Delos and Paros, were left behind to the left hand. On the right were Lebynthus and Calymne, fruitful in honey. When the boy began to be pleased with bolder flight, and forsook his guide, and touched with desire of reaching heaven, pursued his course still higher, the vicinity of the scorching sun softened the fragrant wax that fastened his wings. The wax melted. He shook his naked arms, and, wanting like his oar-like wings, he caught no more air. His face, too, as he called on the name of his father, was received in the azure water which received its name from him. But the unhappy father, now no more a father, said, "Icarus, where art thou? In what spot shall I see thee, Icarus?" Did he say, when he beheld his wings in the water, and then he cursed his own arts, and he buried his body in the tomb, and the land was called from the name of him buried there. As he was laying the body of his unfortunate son in the tomb, a prattling partridge beheld him from a branching holm oak, and by its notes testified its delight. 'Twas then but a single bird of its kind, and never seen in former years, and lately made a bird was a grievous reproof, Daedalus, to thee, for ignorant of the decrees of fate, his sister had entrusted her son to be instructed by him, a boy who had passed twice 6 birthdays, with a mind eager for instruction. 'Twas he too who took the backbones observed in the middle of a fish, for example, and cut a continued row of teeth in iron with a sharp edge, and thus discovered the use of a saw. He was the first too that bound 2 arms of iron to one center, that being divided and of equal length, and the one part might stand fixed and the other might describe a circle. Daedalus was envious and threw him headlong from the sacred citadel of Minerva, falsely pretending that he had fallen by accident. But Pallas, who favors ingenuity, received him and made him a bird, and in the middle of the air he flew upon wings. Yet the vigor of his genius, once so active, passed into his wings and into his feet. His name too remained the same as before. Yet this bird does not raise its body aloft, nor make nest in the branches and the lofty tops of trees, but flies near the ground and lays its eggs in the hedges, and mindful of its former fall, it dreads the higher regions. And now the Aetnaean land received Daedalus in his fatigue, and Cocalus, taking up arms for him as he entreated, was commended for his kindness. So that is the end of Metamorphosis, and we'll now move into Meno, and as this is also a play, I will read the characters as they speak. Socrates, I am afraid, Meno, that you and I are not good for much, and that Gorgias has been as poor and an educator of you as Prodicus has been of me. Certainly we shall have to look to ourselves and try to find some one who will help us in some way or other to improve us. This I say because I observed at the previous discussion none of us remarked that right and good action is possible to man under other guidance than knowledge, and indeed, if this be denied, there is no seeing how there can be any good men at all. Meno, how do you mean, Socrates? Socrates, I mean that good men are necessarily useful or profitable. Were we not right in admitting this? It must be so. Meno, yes. Socrates, and in supposing that they will be useful only if they are true guides to us of action, there we were also right. Meno, yes. Socrates, but when we said that a man cannot be a good guide unless he have knowledge, this we were wrong. Meno, what do you mean by the word right? Socrates, I will explain. If a man knew the way to Larissa, or anywhere else, and went to the place and led others thither, would he not be a right and good guide? Meno, certainly. Socrates, and a person who had a right opinion about the way, but had never been and did not know, might be a good guide also, might he not? Meno, certainly. Socrates, and while he has true opinion about which the other knows, he will be just as good a guide if he thinks the truth as he knows the truth. Meno, exactly. Socrates. Then true opinion is as good a guide to the correct action as knowledge, and that was the point which we omitted in our speculation about the nature of virtue, when we said that knowledge only is the guide of right action, whereas also right opinion. Meno. True. Socrates. Then right opinion is not less useful than knowledge. Meno. The difference, Socrates, is the only that he who has knowledge will always be right, but he who has right opinion will sometimes be right and sometimes not. Socrates. What do you mean? Can he be wrong who has right opinion so long as he has a right opinion? Meno. I admit the cognancy of your argument, and therefore, Socrates, I wonder that knowledge should be preferred to right opinion, or why they should differ. Socrates. And shall I explain this wonder to you? Meno. Do tell me. Socrates. You would not wonder if you had ever observed the images of Daedalus, but perhaps you have not got them in your country? Meno. What do they have to do with the question? Socrates. Because they require to be fastened in order to keep them, and if they are not fastened, they will play truant and run away. Meno. Well, what of that? Socrates. I mean to say that they are not very valuable possessions if they are at liberty, for they will walk or fly like runaway slaves. But when fastened, they are of great value, for they are really beautiful works of art. Now this is an illustration of the nature of true opinions. While they abide with us and they are beautiful and fruitful, they run away out of the human soul and do not remain long, and therefore they are not of much value unless they are fastened by the tie of the cause. And this fastening of them, friend Meno, is recollection, as you and I have agreed to call it. When they are bound, in the first place, they have the nature of knowledge, and in the second place they are abiding. And this is why knowledge is more honorable and excellent than true opinion, because fastened by a chain. Meno. What you are saying, Socrates, seems to be very like the truth. So we are now on to Pliny's Natural History, and this is very long, and if you've never read Pliny's Natural History, it's a bit of a slog. So hopefully you will end up enjoying this. I hope I picked an interesting section. Chapter 57. The Inventors of Various Things. Before we quit the consideration of the nature of man, it appears only proper to point out that those persons who have been the authors of different inventions. Father Liber was the first to establish the practice of buying and selling. He also invented the diadem, the emblem of royalty, and the triumphal procession. Ceres introduced corn, the egg-corn having previously been used by man for food. It was she also who introduced into Attica the art of grinding corn and of making bread, and other similar arts to Sicily. And it was from these circumstances that she came to be regarded as a divinity. She was also the first to establish laws, though according to some it was Rhadamanthus. I have always been of the opinion that letters were of Assyrian origin, but other writers, Gellius for instance, suppose that they were invented in Egypt by Mercury. Others again will have it that they were discovered by the Syrians, and that Cadmus brought from Phoenicia 16 letters to Greece. To these Palmades it is said that at the time of the Trojan War, these four, I'm not going to read you the letters, and Trojan War added these four. Simonides, the lyric poet, afterwards added the numbers. Oh my god, I'm not going to read you the letters. And this sounds denoted by all of which are now received into our alphabet. Aristotle, on the other hand, is rather of the opinion that there were originally 18 letters, and that 2 were introduced by Epicharmus and not by Palamedes. Aristides says that a certain person of the name Minos in Egypt invented letters 15 years before the reign of Phronius, and the most ancient of all the kings of Greece, and this he attempts to prove on the monuments there. On the other hand, Epigenes, a writer of very great authority, informs us that the Babylonians have a series of observations on the stars for a period of 720,000 years, inscribed on baked bricks. Berosus and Critidemus, who make the period the shortest, give it 490,000 years. From this statement it would appear that letters have been in use from all eternity. The Pelagici were the first to introduce them to the Latium. The brothers Euryalus and Hyperbius were the first who constructed brick kilns and houses at Athens, before which caves in the ground served for houses. Gellius is inclined to think that Toxius, the son of Caelus, was the first inventor of mortar, it having been suggested to him by the nest of a swallow. Cecrops gave to a town the name of Cecropia after himself. This is now the citadel of Athens. Some persons will have it that Argos had been founded before this period by King Phronius, others again that Sicyon had been previously built, while the Egyptians declared that their own city, Diospolis, had been in existence long before them. Cinyria, the son of Agriopus, invented tiles and discovered copper mines, both of them in the Isle of Cyprus. He also invented the tongs, the hammer, the lever, and the anvil. Wells were invented by Danaus, who came from Egypt into that part of Greece which had previously been known as Argus Dipsion. The first stone quarries were opened by Cadmus at Thebes, or else according to Theophrastus in Phoenicia. Walls were first built by Thracian according to Aristotle, towers were first erected by the Cyclops, but according to Theophrastus by the Tyrrhene. The Egyptians invented weaving, the Lydians of Sardis the art of dyeing wool. Closter, the son of Arachne, invented the spindle for spinning wool. Arachne herself linen cloth and nets. Nicias of Megara, the art of fulling cloth, and Tychius the Boeotian, the art of making shoes. The Egyptians will have it that the medical art was first discovered among them, while others attribute it to Arabas, the son of Babylonis, and Apollo. Botany and pharmacy are ascribed to Chiron, the son of Saturn, and Philaria. Aristotle supposes that Scythes the Lydian was the first to fuse and temper copper, while Theophrastus describes the art to Delos, the Phrygian. As some persons ascribe the working of copper to the Chalybes, while others the Cyclops. Hesiod says the iron was discovered in Crete by the Aegean Dactyli, and Erycthonius the Athenian, or as some people say, Acus, discovered silver. Gold mines and the mode of fusing that metal were discovered by Cadmus the Phoenician at the mountain of Pagaeus, or, according to other accounts, by Thoas or Iaclus in Panchaia, or else by Sol, son of Oceanus, whom Gellius mentions as having been the first to employ honey in medicine. Metacritus was the first who brought tin from the island of Cassiterius. The Cyclops invented the art of working iron. Corybus the Athenian was the first who made earthen vessels, but Anacharsis the Scythian, or according to Hyperbius the Corinthian, first invented the potter's wheel. Daedalus was the first person who worked in wood. It was he who invented the saw, the axe, the plummet, the gimlet, glue, and isinglass. The square, the level, the turner's lathe, the key were invented by Theodorus of Samos. Measures and weights were invented by Phidion of Argos, or, according to Gellius, by Palamedes. Pyrrhodes, the son of Cilix, was the first to strike fire from flint, and Prometheus taught us how to preserve it in the stalk of a giant fennel. The Phrygians first taught us the use of the chariot with 4 wheels, the Carthaginians the arts of merchandise, and Eumolpus the Athenian the cultivation of the vine and of trees in general. Staphylos, the son of Silenus, is the first to mix water with wine, olive oil, the oil press, and also honey. We owe to Aristeas, the Athenian, the use of oxen, the plough, to Baziges, and the Athenian, or, according to other accounts, to Triptolemus. The Egyptians were the first to establish a monarchical government, the Athenians after the time of Theseus a democracy. Phalaris of Agrigentum was the first tyrant that existed, and the Lycomedians were introducers of slavery. The first capital punishment inflicted was ordered by Areopagus. The first battles were fought against by the Africans against the Egyptians, with clubs which they are in the habit of calling a phalange. Proterus and Acrisius were the first to use shields in their contests with each other, or as some say, Chalcus, son of Athamas. Medius, the Messenian, invented the coat of mail, and the Lycomedians the helmet, the sword, and the spear. Greaves and crests were first used by the Carians. Sais, the son of Jupiter, it is said, invented the bow and arrows, though some say that the arrows were invented by Persis, son of Perseus. Lances were invented by the Aetolians, the javelin with a thong attached by Atolus, the son of Mars, the spear of light infantry by Tyrrhenus, the dart by Penthesilia, the Amazon, the axe by Pisaeus, the hunting spear and the scorpion to hurl missiles by the Cretans, the capatula, the ballista, and the sling by the Syrophoenicians, Pisaeus the Tyrrhenian was the first to invent the brazen trumpet. Artemon of Clazomene, the use of the testudo, the battering horse for the destruction of walls, which is at the present day styled the ram, was invented by Epus at Troy. Belpharon was the first to mounted saddles for the horse. Bridles and saddles for the horse were invented by Pelothronus. The Thessalians, who are called Centauri, who dwell along Mount Pelion, were the first people to fight on horseback. The people of Phrygia were the first to use chariots with 2 horses. Erichthonius first used 4. Palamedes during the Trojan War was the first who marshaled an army and invented watchwords, signals, and the use of sentinels. Scion at the same period invented the art of correspondence by signals. Lycaon was the first to think of making a truce, and Theseus a treaty of alliance. The art of divination by means of birds we owe to Car, from whom Caria derives its name. Orpheus extended it to other animals. Delphus taught us the art of divining by the inspection of entrails. Amphiaraus, divination by fire, and Tiresias the Theban, presages from the entrails of birds. We owe Amphictyon the interpretation of prophets and dreams, and to Atlas, the son of Libya, the art of astrology, or else, according to other accounts, the Egyptians or the Assyrians. Anaximander the Melcian invented the astronomical sphere, and Aeolus, the son of Helen, gave us the theory of the winds. Amphion was the inventor of music, Pan, the son of Mercury, the music of the reed, and the flute with the single pipe. Midas, the Phrygian, the transverse flute, and Marsyas of the same country, the double pipe. Amphion invented the Lydian measures in music. Thamyris, the Thracian, the Dorian, and the Marsyas, the Phrygian, of the Phrygian style. Amphion, or according to some accounts Orpheus, and according to others Linnaeus, invented the lyre. Terpander, adding 3 to the former 4, increased the number of strings to 7. Simonides added an 8th, and Timotheus a 9th. Thamyris was the first who played on the lyre without the accompaniment of voice, and Amphion, or as some say Linnaeus, was the first who accompanied it with voice. Terpander was the first who composed songs expressly for the lyre, and Ardalus the Troezenian was the first who taught us how to combine the voice with the music of the pipe. The Curetes taught us dance and armor, and Pharis the Pyrrhic dance, both of them in Crete. We are indebted to the Pythian oracle for the first heroic verse. A very considerable question has arisen as to what was the origin of poetry. It is well known to have existed before the Trojan War. Pherecydes of Syros, in the time of King Cyrus, was the first to write in prose, and Cadmus the Milesian was the first historian. Lecoin was instituted gymnastic games in Arcadia, Acasta's funeral games at Iolcus, and after him Theseus instituted them at Isthmus. Hercules first instituted the Latin contest at Olympia. Pithous invented the game of ball. Painting was invented in Egypt by Gyges, the Lydian, or according to Aristotle in Greece by Euchre, a kinsman of Daedalus. According to Theophrastus again, it was invented by Polygnotus the Athenian. Danaus was the first who passed over in a ship from Egypt to Greece. Before his time they used to sail on rafts, which had been invented by King Erythras to pass from one island to another in the Red Sea. There are some writers to be found who are of the opinion that they were the first thought of by the Mysians and the Trojans for the purpose of crossing the Hellespont into Thrace. Even at the present day, they are made in the British Ocean of wickerwork covered with hides. On the Nile they are made of papyrus, rushes, and reeds. We learn from Philostephanus that Jason was the first person who sailed in the long vessel. Hegesias says it was Paralis, Ctesias, Samirius, Archimachus, Aegeon, and according to Damascus, the Eurythai were the first to construct vessels with 2 banks of oars. According to Thucydides, Amincles, the Corinthian, first constructed them with 3 banks of oars. According to Aristotle, the Carthaginians with 4 banks. According to Menistigion, the people of Salmis, those with 5 banks. And according to Xenogoras, the Syracusians, those with 6. Those above 6, as far as 10, Menistigion says were first constructed by Alexander the Great. From Philostephanus we learn that Ptolemy Soter made them as high as 12 banks. Demetrius the son of Antigonus with 15, Ptolemy Philadelphus with 30, and Ptolemy Philopator, who was surnamed Tryphon, with 40. Hippas the Tyrian was the first who invented merchant ships. The Cyrenians the pinnace, the Phoenicians the passage boat, the Rhodians the skiff, and the Cyprians the cutter. We indebted to the Phoenician for the first observation of stars and navigation, and the Copae for inventing the oar, and the Plataeans gave it its broad blade. Icarus was the person who invented sails, and Daedalus the mast and yards. The Samians, or else Pericles the Athenian, transports for horses, and the Thracians for long covered vessels, before which time they used to fight only from the prow or the stern. Pisaeus the Tyrrhenian added the beak to the ships, Epalamus the anchor, and Acarsis that with 2 flukes, Pericles the Athenian grappling irons, and hooks like hands, Typhus the helm and rudder. Minos was the first who waged war by means of ships, Hyperius the son of Mars was the first who killed an animal, and Prometheus the first who slew the ox. So again, that ended up as incredibly long, so we're going to a very short discussion about how basically in all of these stories you see that it is the gifts from different gods to create, and we can see this reflected in the historical practice of sacrifice, as humans raise and create, in this context, animals for sacrifice. And also at many locations there were many artisans who made tiny statues and other votives that were then gifted to the gods and left in a sort of antechamber. So there are lots of different ways that humans are creators, and we can see that this is something that is incredibly valuable as people, even in systems where we create systems of government, such as democracy and monarchy. So I will now move into the sacrifice portion, and I will play the video. We leave this offering for our gods to symbolize our connection and devotion. We gift this rock to symbolize the stability of the gods in our world. We gift this water to accept the flow of our lives. We welcome life and bless our offerings with oil to share our riches. We embrace our connection to each other and the world and celebrate our revival. We'll now move into the closing words. As usual, list them as I read them aloud, or read them aloud along with me. As we move out into the world, let us remember our community of faith. Cherish love and open your heart as you walk through life. Hold dear the light of the gods and our connection with the natural world. Go forth in celebration and carry the light of connection within your heart.